Okay, hello. I am trying to choose an option that will allow an individual to not be videoed. I had a student ask me this, and I have the option of stop video, and that's the button that I hit when I do this. And then I also have a recording button, which it is recording now. So if there should be a stop video button beside mute for those of you who would prefer not to have your face recorded. So I think that's the option. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen like I usually do. Okay. And I'm sure some other people will jump in at some point. Okay. So just to go ahead and get started with this week's video, it should not take the full half hour today because we've already gone on over policies and procedures several times. So again, a reminder to check your announcements daily. I do frequently send announcements, especially if students have questions and more than one person asks me the same question. That probably means that that's information that I need to share. Again, our initial posts are due on Wednesdays. They're accepted until Thursday at 11:59 p.m. without penalty. Written assignments are due on Saturdays, and discussion board replies are due on Sunday by 11:59 p.m. However, in week 5, everything is due Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Just a reminder to use your library resources, and we walked through this process last week. I do have a link again in this PowerPoint to the library resources with the APA guide to references and several different APA formatting resources are listed here. Some of you are still struggling with APA format. So these are actual video tutorials and online resources that will help you with the APA, American Psychological Association format that is so important here at St. Thomas in graduate school. I know that it's a pretty big shift from MLA, which is what I used in undergraduate and what I teach in high school. However, APA is definitely the standard for graduate school. So you have a connection to that as well, just in case you have trouble with the link. Okay, so this week we're talking about research questions and how we come up with research statements. And so we start with a topic such as leveled reading instruction, and then we develop a research problem. Now, the research problem is actually more lengthy than just one sentence when it's in your paper, but basically gathered from your literature review, what is it that needs to be solved, or what is the gap in research? What is it that you need to do to improve your situation or to research and study to improve students' situations as well? So the research problem, as far as what went with the topic for leveled reading instruction, is that many students in America are several grade levels behind in reading. That's the problem. The question is, how does leveled reading instruction impact students' reading ability? And then if we decided to hypothesize that there was an impact, which is what we would do if we were doing a qualitative study, there is a relationship between leveled reading instruction and student reading ability. So your research question is the question that should be answered by the study. Your research hypothesis, if you have a quantitative study, is your prediction about what the results will test. What are the results of the test that your study is running be? Now, if you have a qualitative study, you basically have a research question and you move forward into gathering data, and that data gathered from the perspectives and the actual words and actions of your participants will lead you to the answer of your research question. So you have two different types of research hypotheses. One will indicate that there will be a difference between variables. The other will indicate that there will be a relationship among variables. So when you set up your study, if you are having a quantitative research study, you will choose one or the other of these two. Now, the hypotheses are what you want to do to test your research question. So you develop a research hypothesis. Then you will develop a null and alternative hypothesis. And this can be a little bit confusing, but this language should be used in your research proposal. It should be used when you do your research statement and your research question. So here's the research question. This is going to be a hypothesis. How does leveling for reading instruction impact students' reading ability? So the hypothesis, again, is how does leveling for reading instruction impact students' reading ability? And the research hypothesis for quantitative studies states that leveling for reading instruction increases students' reading ability. So as I am predicting, my hypothesis is a prediction of the answer to my question. Leveling for reading instruction increases students' reading ability. The null hypothesis is when the results of the study are not true or are by chance. So maybe the students' reading ability increased, but we cannot say that it's due to leveled reading instruction. Or if the student's reading ability did not increase, then certainly that would be the null hypothesis as well. The alternative hypothesis is the same as the original prediction. It is the same as the research hypothesis. Leveling for reading instruction increases students' reading ability. So when you do the study and you conduct the test, you will say, the alternative hypothesis is true. Leveling for reading instruction increases students' reading ability. Now you have to be careful with your null hypothesis because the null hypothesis is not the opposite of the research hypothesis. The research hypothesis says that leveling for reading instruction increases students' reading ability. However, the null does not mean that leveling for reading instruction decreases the students' reading ability. What it means, the null, is that my hypothesis is not true or is by chance. So you're just saying that I did not get the results that I expected. You're not saying that the opposite is proven. Proving the opposite is very different than simply stating that the research hypothesis was not true. So you are being asked this week to discuss whether or not you will use inferential or descriptive statistics in your study. And basically, descriptive statistics are a collection of data that is organized and categorized, and trends are summarized and patterns are explained. Descriptive statistics primarily relate to just the population that you're studying. There is no generalization to a larger population. For example, if we studied leveled reading instruction with a group of fourth grade students at a particular school, the descriptive data would explain those results, place those results in categories, but it would not infer anything about all fourth graders or all students in that school. So just make sure when you go through this process that you are focusing on descriptive or inferential. But I will give you a hint. In your actual study, most likely you will have both descriptive and inferential if you have a rich study. Inferential means that you're inferring from the data, you're testing the hypothesis. So automatically, if you're doing a quantitative study, you will use both descriptive and inferential. If you're determining relationships, if you're making predictions about the future or generalizing to a larger population, you are using inferential. But obviously, if you're using inferential, you're also using descriptive. So descriptive data describes results of findings. If you're describing the whole population of subjects that you are studying, organizing that information and summarizing that data only, and limiting your results to the students or the participants in that one population that you've actually worked with in the study, then that's descriptive. Inferential is where you infer conclusions based on findings about a larger population of subjects based on a sample. So descriptive means I've talked to every single fourth grade student in this school, and based on this study, the fourth grade students in this school are, and then finish. But inferential would mean I've studied 5 classrooms of fourth grade students, and there are 10 classrooms of fourth grade students in this school, but based on my sample, I'm determining that the entire school will perform based on these 5. So that's basically the difference there. So we're talking about research variables this week, and I will just tell you that some people do get confused about research variables. I'm sorry, let me go back. I'm trying to move my thumbnails, okay, so that I can see. So if your hypothesis is that leveled reading instruction increases the student's reading performance, your independent variable there is the type of reading instruction. So the independent variable is not impacted by student performance. So it is independent. It is the one making the impact. So the type of reading instruction, such as ability grouping, is the constant at the beginning of the experiment. It is not dependent on the other variable. The dependent variable is student performance. So in the hypothesis, what you expect to change as a result of the independent variable is the dependent variable. In this case, it's students' reading performance. It's the primary object of the study, and the dependent variable, the outcome is based on what the independent variable does to it. And that's the simplest way I know to explain it, but I hope that helps you. So we're also talking about scales of measurement this week. And scales of measurement are how differences are measured and explained. And there are 3 primary scales of measurement that we talk about in this class. There are actually 4. One is called ratio, but that's in more complicated studies and that involve a tremendous amount of math. So there are 3 levels of measurement scales: nominal, which is just the name of an item. For example, it only gives you information. For example, you might have the adult group and the child group, and those are your labels. Or you might have labels 1, 2, 3, 4, and those designate races or ethnicities of students. 1 isn't necessarily more important than number 4. The numbers simply serve as labels. So that is what nominal measurements are, and it is necessary to have nominal measurements or nominal labels in studies. And most of you all will have nominal and something else in your studies. Ordinal types of measurement shows ranking, best to least or least to best. They're different, but which is larger from the other. Percentages are one form of ordinal measurement. So for example, 1 might be poor, a little bit better than that would be below average, a little bit better than that would be average, and then better than that would be excellent. Even though you know that 1, 2, 3, and 4 are ranked differently, the distance between 1 and 2 is not defined, or 2 and 3, or 3 and 4. And that's where we come into interval types of measurement. The distance between items is very important here. It demonstrates a scale in equal increments, figuring out the distance between the A and the B and the C and the C and the D, often using mathematical operations. Not just which one is larger, but how much larger, and the standards between each level, A, B, C, and D, are the same. So it's very mathematically balanced. And standard deviation and average are 2 common distributions. So methods of analysis for your data may include standard deviation or average. So when we look at research variables, like we said before, the independent variable has a measure. So we're talking about differences between variables, which would be differences between independent and dependent variables. And the independent variable has a level of measurement. Are you identifying it nominally or ordinally? You have to determine how you're going to label and level that variable for both the independent and the dependent. And remember, the independent variable affects the dependent variable, or it does not affect the dependent variable. That's what you're trying to determine. So if your hypothesis is leveled reading instruction increases students' reading performance, then your independent variable is the type of instruction. Your nominal measurement would be Group A will receive leveled instruction. Students' names will be kept anonymous and individually identified with letters A through S. So we're nominally labeling the group of students and the names of students. So that is a nominal measurement. Even though there's not a quantity in there that matters, it's also referred to as a measurement. Then the dependent variable is student performance or test scores. And I'll use an interval measurement there because I'm using a 10-point grading scale with a very defined level within my ranking system. So that's an example there of how you would discuss your hypothesis, talk about the variables, and how those variables are measured. That is in your assignment this week. So this slide should be very helpful to you. So then we can also explore relationships among variables, a correlational variable and the measurement, and another correlational variable and a measurement. So that might, if we wanted to look at correlations with the leveled reading instruction example, what we would say is the more leveled reading instruction we do, the higher student performance goes. So there's a positive correlation. An increase in leveled reading instruction results in an increase in student performance, or a negative correlation, which would be the more leveled reading instruction we have, the less performance we have on student reading ability. So that is how you would discuss a correlation or relationships versus the difference. So those are the two types of variables. So I do have a link here on correlational research that is very helpful, and it's written in what I like to call real people language. And it describes direct correlation, positive and negative, correlational coefficients, and different types of correlational studies. So you can use these examples perhaps to frame your study around so that you know a little bit about the correlation, because correlation studies are very popular, but also it can be confusing in how you set those up. So this is a nice demonstration of how you can use correlational variables. But if you're discussing differences between variables, like the first hypothesis, then you wouldn't discuss a correlation. It would be one or the other, the difference or the correlation. So for your discussion board initial post this week, you're going to state your research question, indicate the type of research your question lends itself to, descriptive or inferential or both, and explain why. So you're going to tell, I'm using descriptive data, and this is why, and inferential data, and this is why, so that you can demonstrate your understanding of the two. So a strong discussion board reply supports a position based on research. It offers a contrasting point of view, or it begins a new topic, or it clarifies a point already made, or it critically reflects on comments made. It's very nice when you compliment each other and you give an example about an experience at your school or in your position, and you're very supportive of one another, and that's a really nice way to start out your discussion board reply. However, the focus needs to be one of these 5 items. You're moving your thought process and your communication to a different level, to a graduate level as a professional student. So the discussion board, as I say every week, each one is worth 2.5 points. When I initially score it, I will give you 1 point just to let you know that the assignment has been seen, has not been scored. And usually your initial post I score on Friday, and then I score the rest of the papers on Monday. Sometimes I wait until the weekend, especially if I have to give prompting feedback to students before I actually put the full 5 points on there. So this week you're doing a research problem, not the entire research proposal. And this describes the context for the question. It includes a problem statement and a description of the subjects. It makes a clear research question. It describes the variables, and it states the hypothesis to be addressed. So if you go to the research proposal guide, you will probably see an example of an entire proposal. But remember, this week all you're doing are these bullet points that are required for the research proposal, just the research problem. Excuse me. So the assignment rubric for this week looks very similar. As a matter of fact, it's exactly the same for now in the next few weeks. It says that the conceptual understanding has cognitive analysis, shows commands of interpretive and conceptual tasks and course materials, is original and insightful, and it goes beyond repeating the ideas in the course. So this is a pretty stringent rubric that St. Thomas puts before us. We're focusing on methodology this week. It's appropriate for the research question. The sample and measurement are thoroughly discussed. Then it goes beyond that, because this is a 15-point assignment this week. Use of language, uses of sophisticated sentences effectively, observes conventions and makes few mechanical errors. Elements and components, each component is present as required and stipulated in the instructions. It shows an excellent understanding of material, going above and beyond. So please note that to get the maximum amount of points here, you have to go above and beyond. And then, of course, the kicker for you guys, no errors in APA style, scholarly style. So this means that if your APA is not where it needs to be, that's a fifth of your grade on this assignment. So it also impacts use of language and other areas. But if you know APA style, you're going to have a huge battle won by this point. Okay, so I'm going to stop share right now and just have a conversation with you. This is a pretty quick lesson. We have about 10 minutes left in our time, and I just want to open it up to the three of you and see if you have any questions. So you can go unmute yourself and ask a question if you have one. Okay, I don't think I have any questions. Yamada, I think you have a message in your speed grader, and I've given you the opportunity to resubmit that document. I think that we've crossed paths and not fully communicated, so you may want to double check in speed grader and your email, because I left you a message yesterday to make sure that we're all clear on that.
Okay, I just got back from work now, so I'll double check that now.
Okay, I think what it is you just need to upload it again after you've reviewed it. And so I just opened up the window for you one more time so that you can get that final copy in there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. If there are no more questions, I'm going to end the meeting. Be sure and send me an email if you have a question. If you want a quick response, send it to tsands@stu.edu, because that email will come to my phone. And the ones that are inside Canvas, I only get a notification once a day. So any message that is there, I won't get that until the end of the evening. So thank you very much for coming online. I hope it was helpful. Have a great week, and be sure to email me if you have questions. Thank you.